The twin suns burned low over the alien colony city of Krithar, casting orange light on its dusty metal streets. The air smelled of roasted meat, engine smoke, and something strange, whetstone mixed with spices. Humans and aliens shouted across the open market, bargaining, laughing, fighting. Evan Cross, a human mechanic from Earth, walked through the crowd with a small list in his hand. He only wanted one thing: fresh meat for his crew's dinner. His boots were worn from years of walking through alien lands, but his eyes were sharp. He had seen war, hunger, and betrayal, but this world still made him curious. He stopped near a stall where chunks of blue meat hung from silver hooks. "How much for 2 kilos?" he asked. The alien butcher, a thick-scaled creature with red eyes, hissed in numbers Evan barely understood. He sighed and reached for his credit chip. That's when he heard the sound, chains clinking and a woman's voice crying softly in the distance. The noise pulled him away from the meat stall, deeper into the market. There in a small square, a crowd had gathered around a raised platform. Alien traders shouted, waving strange documents. At the center stood a tall, thin woman with pale violet skin and silver eyes. Her hands were bound by metal cuffs and her long black hair was tangled. "Next item," shouted the auctioneer. 1 unit, adult female, former property of the Lakar house. Damaged, weak, but still alive. The crowd laughed. Someone threw a fruit that splattered near her feet. She didn't flinch. Her chin stayed high, her silver eyes cold with silent pride. Evan froze. He didn't believe what he was seeing. They're selling people here. It wasn't the first time he'd seen slavery in alien worlds, but this was different. The woman wasn't begging or screaming. She was just standing there like she had already died inside long ago. 5 credits, shouted one alien. 6, another laughed. "Not worth more than that, she'll die in a week." The auctioneer turned, smiling greedily. "Anyone else? Come on." A rare specimen, her kind once ruled half this sector. Evan's heartbeat grew louder in his chest. He didn't know why he stepped forward, but he did. 10 credits, he said quietly. The laughter stopped. Every alien turned toward him. A human bidding at their market? The auctioneer blinked, then sneered. 10 from a human? "You buying meat or pity?" Evan met his gaze. "I said 10, the alien crowd whispered. The auctioneer grinned. "Sold to the human fool." The iron cuffs were unlocked, and the woman stumbled forward, weak from hunger. When she looked up, her silver eyes met his brown ones for the first time. For a second, the noise of the market faded. Her lips trembled as if she wanted to say something, but no words came. Evan handed the payment chip, ignoring the stares around him. "She's coming with me." He helped her walk away from the platform. The crowd parted slowly, some curious, some disgusted. A few even spat in his direction. "Humans, always trying to play hero," someone hissed. But Evan didn't care. As they reached the quieter part of the street, he noticed her bare feet bleeding slightly. He stopped beside a water vendor, bought a small bottle and handed it to her. "Here," he said softly. She looked at the bottle, then at him, unsure. Slowly she took it. Her fingers shook. She tried to drink but coughed halfway, unused to clean water. He smiled faintly. "Take it easy. You're safe now." Her eyes softened a little, but she didn't speak. "Do you understand me?" he asked. She tilted her head. Then after a pause, she placed a hand over her chest and whispered a single word. "Liraya." Evan nodded. "Liraya? Okay, I'm Evan." He pointed to himself, then to her. "Evan. Liraya." Something changed in her eyes, like she recognized the gesture, maybe even respected it. They walked together through the empty alleys, the sound of the market fading behind them. The sky turned darker as twin moons began to rise. He could feel the stares of others on his back, judging him for what he'd done. At one point, she stumbled again, weak from exhaustion. He caught her arm before she fell. She flinched, expecting pain, but he only helped her stand straight. "You're okay," he said quietly. "No one's going to hurt you." For a brief moment, Liraya's lips moved again, whispering something in her alien tongue. The words were soft, sad, and filled with gratitude. He couldn't understand them, but somehow he felt their meaning. As they neared the edge of the market, the old butcher from before called out, "Hey, human, you forgot your meat." Evan turned his head slightly and said, "I already bought what I needed." The butcher blinked, confused. As Evan and the alien woman disappeared down the street, 2 broken souls walking side by side into the unknown. That night, Under the cold twin moons, Evan realized something strange. He had come to the market to fill his stomach, but he left with something that would fill his heart instead. The next morning on Outpost Delta 9, the small human base on Crethar, the metal doors hissed open and Evan stepped inside with Lyraya behind him. The guards stared in shock. No one brought strangers in, especially not alien slaves. "Who's that?" asked his friend Marcus, raising a brow. "Someone who needed help," Evan replied simply. Marcus crossed his arms. "You went for meat and came back with her?" Evan didn't answer. He guided Lyraya to a chair and brought her a cup of hot broth. The smell filled the cold air. She sniffed it but didn't touch it. Her hands trembled slightly, her silver eyes scanning the metal walls and strange human machines around her. "It's food," Evan said softly. "Safe, eat." Lyraya looked at him, then at the cup. But instead of drinking first, she gently pushed it toward him. Evan frowned in confusion. "You want me to drink it?" She nodded once. He took a small sip, and only then did she lift the cup to her lips and drink slowly. It hit him. She wanted to be sure it wasn't poison. Or maybe it was a gesture of respect. Either way, it said more than words could. Marcus muttered from the corner, "You're gonna get in trouble for this. Council doesn't like humans buying aliens. They'll think you're keeping a servant." Evan shrugged. "Then they can come ask me themselves." Over the next few days, Lyraya barely spoke. She watched everything. The humming generators, the flickering holograms, the crew fixing equipment. When she moved, she did it quietly, gracefully, like a shadow. One evening, Evan found her sitting by the window, staring at the red sunset. "You miss your world?" he asked. She turned her head slightly. "Gone," she whispered in broken English. "All gone." He sat beside her. "War?" She nodded. "Fire, ships, all burned, my mate dead." Evan looked down. There wasn't much he could say. War had taken many things from everyone, even from humans like him. "I'm sorry." She stayed silent, but her fingers pressed against the glass as if trying to touch the fading light. "You save," she said slowly. "Why?" He smiled a little. "Because you didn't deserve what they did to you. No one does." Her expression changed, confusion mixed with something fragile. "Human, strange," he laughed quietly. "You're not the first to say that." That night, while Evan was repairing the generator outside, he noticed movement behind him. Lyraya had followed, carrying a small toolkit. He chuckled. "You don't have to help," she pointed at the wires. "Sparkbad," she said simply, kneeling beside him. Her fingers moved carefully, twisting the connectors. Somehow she knew what to do. "You understand machines?" he asked, impressed. She nodded faintly. "Before war, I fix things." "Energy nets, homes," Evan smiled. "Then you're one of us now." For the first time since he met her, she smiled. Just a small one, shy and soft, but real. A few days later, rumors spread through the colony. People whispered that the human engineer had bought an alien widow. Some said he was crazy, others called him foolish. One afternoon, 2 alien merchants stopped by. "You still keeping that broken widow, human?" One mocked. "Sell her back, we'll give you half your money." Evan stared at them coldly. "She's not for sale." They laughed, pointing at Lyraya, who stood behind him silently. "You think she'll stay?" "Her kind doesn't trust humans. Wait till she cuts your throat in your sleep." Before Evan could reply, Lyraya stepped forward. Her voice, though quiet, was steady. "No hurt him." The merchants blinked. Evan smiled proudly. "See? She just said it herself." They spat on the ground and walked away. Lyraya turned to him, worried. "They hate you now." "They already did," Evan said with a shrug. "You just gave them a reason to talk louder." That evening, rain fell on the outpost, soft and silver. Lyraya worked beside him, drying tools. The sound of thunder echoed through the hills. "Lyraya," he said softly. "You don't have to stay here if you don't want to." She looked up, surprised. "Go where?" "Anywhere," he said. "You're free now." Her eyes lowered. "Free," she repeated, tasting the word. Then she shook her head. "No home, no sky. Only here." He watched her for a long moment. "Then stay. Not as property, as crew." She met his eyes. "Crew?" He nodded. "You help me. I help you. That's how humans do it." Lyraya hesitated, then smiled again, this time with a little strength behind it. "Crew," she said proudly. When Marcus passed by and saw them laughing quietly over broken wires, he couldn't help but shake his head. "You really are something, Evan. You didn't just buy trouble, you invited it home." Evan chuckled. "Maybe, but sometimes trouble needs a chance to rest." Outside, the rain stopped. The twin moons rose again, bright and soft. Through the window, their light fell across Lyraya's face, and for the first time she didn't look lost anymore. Evan didn't know it yet. But what began as a random act of mercy was turning into something deeper, something that would soon challenge every belief this colony held about humans and aliens. Weeks passed quietly on Outpost Delta 9. The humans got used to seeing the alien woman walking beside Evan through the metal corridors. She never complained, never demanded anything, but her presence changed the rhythm of the place. The air felt warmer, more human somehow. Every morning, Lyraya helped in the mess hall, learning how to cook human food. She would point at the ingredients, repeating the words after Evan with soft effort. "Salt," he said. "Salt," she repeated, smiling proudly. "Close enough," he chuckled. At first, some crew members avoided her. They whispered when she passed, old fears of alien wars still fresh in their minds. But when the water system broke one night, Lyraya was the first to crawl into the pipes and repair the energy valves. Her slender hands moved fast, her mind sharper than most engineers. When the lights came back, she was covered in silver dust but smiling faintly. Marcus whistled. "Guess your alien's got talent, huh?" Evan grinned. "Told you. She's crew." That evening, the crew gathered for dinner. Lyraya sat quietly at the far end of the table. She still hesitated to eat with humans, afraid of offending their customs. Evan noticed and called out, "Lyraya, here, sit." She froze for a moment, then obeyed. Marcus placed a bowl in front of her. She stared at it, then lifted her head, uncertain. Evan smiled gently. "It's fine. You're one of us now." The others nodded slowly. That night, laughter filled the hall for the first time in weeks. Lyraya didn't laugh much, but when Evan joked about his terrible cooking, she covered her mouth and let out a small sound. A light, melodic laugh that made everyone pause. Even Marcus smiled. Days turned into routine. Lyraya learned to fix generators, clean solar panels, and even taught Evan alien words. Sometimes she'd point at the stars through the dome window and whisper the names of her lost constellations. "One day," she said softly, "my people believe souls become stars." Evan looked up beside her. "Then they're watching you." She smiled sadly. "Maybe, but I hope they forgive me." "Forgive you? For what?" "For living." Her eyes shimmered under the starlight. "When others died." Evan didn't know what to say, so he simply placed a blanket around her shoulders. "Then live well," he said. "That's how you honor them." But peace never lasted long on alien worlds. One afternoon, while Evan and Lyraya worked outside the main hub, a group of alien merchants appeared, the same kind who had mocked them at the market. "Well, look who's pretending to be human's pet," one of them jeered in their rough language. Evan turned sharply. "Leave," the merchant grinned. "She belongs with her kind, not with you, human. You think saving one slave makes you a hero?" Lyraya stepped forward. "I choose," she said clearly. Her voice shook but carried power. "I stay here." The merchant laughed coldly. "You forget your place, widow of Lakar. Your people lost. You serve or you starve." Before Evan could react, one of them shoved her shoulder. Evan's hand moved faster than thought. He grabbed the alien's wrist and twisted it back. "Touch her again," he said quietly, "and I'll make sure you can't use that hand ever again." The alien hissed, pulling free. "This isn't over, human. The council will hear of this." They left with dark looks, but Lyraya stood frozen, trembling. Evan turned to her. "You okay?" She nodded weakly. "You protect me." Again. He smiled faintly. "You'd do the same." She hesitated, then said softly, "Maybe. I already did." Later that night, as rain whispered against the metal roof, Lyraya stood by the window again, watching the reflections. Humans and my kind, Not same, she murmured. Different blood. Different hearts. Evan came beside her. Maybe. But kindness feels the same in every language. She looked at him for a long time before replying. You strange human. Always risk for others. He shrugged. Maybe that's what keeps us human. For the first time she smiled with warmth. Then maybe I want to be human too. A few days later, while cleaning the corridor, one of the engineers tripped near a plasma cutter. The sparks flew dangerously close to a child who had wandered in, a colonist's son. Without thinking, Lariah dove forward and shielded the boy with her body. The sparks burned across her arm, leaving glowing marks. The boy was safe. Everyone rushed to help. Evan tore off his jacket and wrapped her arm. You're insane, he said, half angry, half terrified. She just looked up at him and whispered, Crew help crew. Those 3 words spread across the outpost like a storm. By nightfall, no one called her alien anymore. She was Lariah, the one who saved a child. As she lay resting in the med bay, Evan sat beside her bed watching her breathe. The machines hummed softly. She opened her eyes and whispered, Evan, yeah? Thank you for buying me that day. He smiled gently. I didn't buy you, Lariah. I just stopped others from owning you. Her eyes glistened. Still, you gave me life again. He leaned back, looking up at the ceiling. You gave me something too. You reminded me why I came out here, to find something worth believing in. Outside, the colony lights flickered softly against the dark alien desert. Inside, 2 souls from 2 dying worlds began to build something new. A fragile, quiet home between stars. The night sky above Crethar was painted deep blue, with silver storms flashing far beyond the horizon. The outpost was quiet. The generators hummed softly, the crew asleep after a long workday. Only the twin moons watched the sleeping colony, their light pouring through the thin metal windows. Evan sat in his small workshop, adjusting a damaged drone. The soft glow of his tools danced across the walls. Lariah sat nearby, silently repairing a torn jacket with steady hands. She had grown stronger, her eyes no longer dull. But that night, there was something different in her face, something restless. You're not sleeping? Evan asked, tightening a bolt. She shook her head. Sky... Wrong, she whispered. He frowned. Wrong. She looked outside again. Storm not real. Smoke. Before he could ask more, the warning alarm suddenly screamed through the outpost. A red light flashed. The communication panel blinked with urgent text. Hostile signatures detected. Perimeter breach. Evan's heart dropped. Raiders, he muttered. Damn it. He grabbed his pulse rifle and ran toward the gate. Lariah followed without hesitation. The outer cameras flickered, showing dark shapes moving through the sandstorm. Armed aliens, the same traders from the market, and a few others with heavy blasters. Marcus's voice echoed from the comms. They're after her, Evan. They want her back. Evan cursed. Over my dead body. He rushed out into the open air, the storm whipping around him. Lariah tried to stop him, but he was already halfway down the ramp. The raiders were breaking. Through the outer fence, their shadows flickering under lightning. The leader shouted, Human! Give us the widow! She belongs to us! Evan raised his rifle. She belongs to no one. Blaster fire lit the night. Blue bolts ripped through the sand, striking the metal walls. Evan ducked behind a crate and returned fire, his shots precise. He hit one of the raiders square in the chest. Down. The others spread out. Evan! Marcus shouted from the tower. 2 more coming from the north. I see them. Evan yelled back. He turned, firing again, the weapon shaking in his hands. One shot grazed his shoulder, burning through his jacket. He gritted his teeth but kept shooting. Lariah appeared beside him, dragging a fallen blaster. Her eyes glowed faintly silver under the moonlight. Give, she shouted, tossing him a power cell. He caught it midair, reloaded, and grinned. You learn fast. She crouched next to him, her breathing steady despite the chaos. I fight before, she said softly. Long ago. Evan glanced at her. Then let's fight together. They fired side by side. The sandstorm howled around them like an angry beast. Energy bolts streaked across the dark, lighting their faces. The attackers pressed closer, shouting curses. One of them threw a grenade. Evan grabbed Lariah and pulled her down just in time. The explosion rocked the ground, shaking the outpost walls. When the smoke cleared, Evan pushed himself up, his ears ringing. He saw 3 raiders still advancing. He aimed, but his rifle clicked empty. Before he could move, Lariah stood up, her silver eyes blazing. She stepped forward and shouted in her own language, words full of fury and command. The raiders froze, shocked. For a moment, Evan saw it. Her old power, the blood of a noble house, the authority that once ruled systems. You still speak the royal tongue. One of them stammered. I do, she said coldly. And you will kneel before it or die. They hesitated, but one raised his weapon anyway. Evan threw himself in front of her, taking the shot to his side. He collapsed with a cry, the impact throwing him to the ground. Evan! Lariah screamed, dropping beside him. Her hands shook as she pressed against the wound. Why? Why protect me again? He grimaced, breathing hard. Because that's what humans do. Her eyes filled with tears. She looked at the raiders, rage overtaking fear. With a sudden movement, she grabbed Evan's fallen rifle and fired it herself. The energy pulse hit one attacker, sending him crashing backward. The rest turned and fled into the storm, their courage gone. When silence finally returned, only the wind and the hum of the generators remained. Lariah fell to her knees beside Evan, her hand still pressed against his wound. Blood stained her fingers. Stay. Awake, she begged. Please. He gave a weak smile. You did good, Lariah. She shook her head, tears running down her cheeks. No, you hurt because of me. He coughed slightly. Maybe, but I'd do it again. When the medics arrived minutes later, they found her still holding his hand, refusing to move even as they lifted him onto a stretcher. As they carried him away, she whispered something in her alien tongue, soft words like a prayer. Later, she would translate them for him. They meant, you are not from my world, but your heart feels like home. That night, after the attackers were gone and the storm faded, Lariah stood alone under the moons. The wind carried the smell of burned metal and dust. She stared at the sky and made a silent vow. She would never let harm come to him again. In that moment, the widow who had lost everything became something new, a protector, not a slave. 2 days after the attack, silence ruled the outpost. The metal corridors echoed with only the sound of humming machines and soft footsteps. Evan lay in the medical bay, pale but breathing. The plasma wound on his side was deep, but the doctors said he would live. Lariah hadn't left his side since that night. She barely spoke. She sat beside his bed, holding a small cloth to wipe the sweat from his forehead. The once strong woman looked fragile again, but her eyes held a storm. When Evan finally opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was her face. Tired, but filled with quiet relief. You're awake, she whispered. He smiled weakly. Yeah, guess I'm too stubborn to die. Her lips trembled. You hurt because of me. He shook his head. No. I got hurt protecting someone who deserved it. Tears filled her eyes, but she turned away. You don't understand. You protect the wrong person. Evan frowned. What do you mean? For a long time she said nothing. Then she reached into her torn jacket and pulled out a small metallic pendant. Black, shaped like a crescent with glowing silver veins. This, she said softly, is mark of the Lakar Dominion. Evan's breath caught. He'd heard that name before. The Lakar, the empire that enslaved humans during the war. She nodded slowly, her voice trembling. Yes, I was wife to their commander. His war killed thousands of your kind. I helped him. Evan blinked, confused. You were part of that? I was his advisor, she whispered, tears falling freely now. I built energy nets that trapped human ships. I believed his lies that your kind were monsters. When the truth came, it was too late. The war ended. He was killed. My people fell. I ran, but guilt followed me. Evan stared at her in stunned silence. He didn't know what to say. The woman he'd saved, Was part of the army that once tried to destroy his people. I tried to end my life, she continued quietly. I was captured by traitors before I could. They sold me as slave. Maybe that was justice. Evan closed his eyes, processing her words. His heart felt heavy, but not with hatred. When he opened them again, she was still crying silently, her hands shaking as she held the pendant. Lyraya, he said softly. Look at me. She hesitated, then turned toward him. You regret it? He asked. Her voice cracked. Every breath, he nodded slowly. Then you already did more than most people do. You changed. She looked at him, confused. You forgive me? I don't forgive the Empire, he said quietly, but I forgive you. Because you're not her anymore, the woman who built those nets. You're the one who saved a child and stood beside humans when everyone else ran. Her tears fell harder now. Why? Why forgive? He smiled faintly. Because that's what humans do. We try again. For the next few days, something shifted between them. Evan healed slowly, but every time he woke, Lyraya was there, reading from a small data pad, learning human words. She wanted to speak properly, to understand him better. Teach me, she said one morning, holding a notepad clumsily. Teach human words. Good words, Evan chuckled. All right, let's start with hope. She repeated it carefully. Hope. Means believing something better is coming, he explained. She nodded softly. Then I have hope too. Later that evening, the colony's council arrived for inspection. They had heard about the attack and about her. The officials, all humans, stood tall in the medbay doorway, watching her with cold eyes. You're the alien from the Lakar, one of them said sharply. You should have been reported. You know what her kind did to our fleets? Evan sat up, grimacing from the pain. She's not their kind anymore. She saved my crew, the officer glared at him. That doesn't erase her crimes. Lyraya stepped forward slowly. Her hands trembled, but her voice was calm. He speaks truth. I am guilty, but not of this attack. I fight to protect this place. The officer raised an eyebrow. Why should we believe you? She reached out her pendant, placing it on the table. Because I will not hide from what I was. You can judge me, but if you take me away, take also my work, my repairs, my codes, my hands that now build instead of destroy. The room fell silent. Finally, the council leader sighed. We'll discuss this. Until then, she stays under supervision. When they left, Evan leaned back, smiling weakly. You stood up to them, she smiled faintly. Human courage, maybe catching. That night, Evan and Lyraya sat outside under the twin moons again. The desert wind was soft, the silence peaceful. Evan said quietly, You know, there's something strange about us humans. She tilted her head. Strange? Yeah, we find light even in the people who once brought darkness. She smiled sadly. Then maybe I see light now. Because of you. He looked at her, his eyes warm. No, Lyraya. Because it was already there. You just forgot it existed. For a long moment they said nothing. The stars above seemed closer, brighter, as if her lost world was finally forgiving her. That night she whispered to herself before sleeping, If my husband taught me war, then you, Evan Cross, taught me humanity. And in that quiet promise the past began to loosen its hold. A week later, the outpost received an official summon from the Colonial Council of Crithar. It came sealed in blue digital code, a rare and serious thing. The message read, Human subject Evan Cross and alien subject Lyraya of the former Lakar Dominion are to appear before the Council for inquiry regarding unlawful ownership, harboring of a war criminal, and violation of interspecies trade law. Evan read it twice, his jaw tightening. They're calling her a war criminal, he muttered. Marcus sighed. You knew this was coming, Evan. The Council won't ignore her past. Lyraya stood silently beside him, her face calm, but her hands trembling slightly. If they want me, she said softly, I will go. Evan turned toward her. You don't have to face them alone, she shook her head. Your law, your world. I bring trouble. He stepped closer, looking her straight in the eyes. Then we face it together. I started this by bringing you here. I'll finish it standing next to you. The next morning, the transport shuttle carried them across the vast desert to the Central Council Dome, a massive structure of glass and steel. The chamber inside was filled with both humans and aliens, representatives from different colonies. The air buzzed with tension. When they entered, whispers spread through the crowd. Some looked curious, others angry. At the front sat 5 counselors in formal robes, each symbol glowing faintly on their collars. The lead counselor, Admiral Hensley, spoke first. Evan Cross, you stand accused of violating colony law by purchasing and harboring an alien citizen without registration. And Lariah of the Lakar Dominion, you are charged with aiding a known enemy during the Great War. Do you both understand the charges? Evan nodded. We do. Lariah lowered her head. Yes, then speak, said Hensley. Why should we not return her to interstellar custody? Evan stepped forward. His side still ached, but his voice was strong. Because she's not who she used to be. The woman who worked for the Lakar died with that empire. The one standing here saved lives. Mine, my crew's, even a child's. She risked everything to protect humans. The counselors exchanged glances. One of them, a stern woman with gray eyes, leaned forward. And what makes you think her change is real? People lie, Mr. Cross, especially when it saves them. Evan met her gaze. Because I saw her bleed for others when she had no reason to. Because she could have run that night when the raiders came, but she stayed and fought beside us. You don't fake that. The room murmured quietly. Then Hensley turned to Lariah. You may speak, alien. Lariah stepped forward slowly, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. She didn't look afraid anymore. Her voice was soft but carried through the chamber. I was born to power, she began. My people taught me that humans were weak. We were wrong. I helped build weapons that trapped your ships. I watched war burn worlds. I thought strength came from fear. But then, I lost everything. My world, my mate, my home. She paused, looking at Evan. And when I had nothing left, a human gave me water. He bought me. Not for power, not for labor, but because his heart refused to walk away. The counselors listened silently. I was a slave to my guilt, she continued. But he showed me what freedom means. Not in words, but in kindness. I cannot erase my past, but I can build something new. If you want to punish me, I will not run. But know this. If your kind can forgive a creature like me, maybe there is hope for all our worlds. For a moment, there was silence. Even the air felt still. Then, unexpectedly, one of the alien counselors spoke. My daughter was on that outpost when the fire broke out, he said quietly. She told me an alien woman saved her life. Gasps rippled through the room. Evan looked at Lariah. Her eyes widened in surprise. The alien counselor stood. This is that woman. If humanity cannot see her heart, then maybe they have forgotten their own. Hensley leaned back, folding his hands. The silence stretched. Finally, he sighed. Lariah of the Lakar, your crimes cannot be erased, but they are outweighed by your deeds since. By vote of this council, you are granted conditional freedom under human protection. Evan Cross, you are cleared of charges. The chamber erupted in murmurs, some angry, some relieved. Evan turned to Lariah, smiling faintly. Told you. Together. Her eyes shimmered as she whispered, together. When they left the dome, the sun was setting. The sky burned orange and gold. Lariah stopped at the top of the stairs, staring at the crowd below, some still glaring, others cheering quietly. She turned to Evan. They will never all accept me. He nodded. Maybe not. But they'll remember you. She smiled softly. And you? He grinned. I already do. That night, as they flew back to the outpost, Lariah watched the stars pass by through the shuttle window. Humans, she murmured, forgive so easily. It's beautiful and dangerous. Evan chuckled. We call it faith. It's what lets us keep trying. She looked at him for a long time, her voice gentle. Then I will try too. The engines hummed as the ship carried them home. 2 souls, one from war, one from mercy, bound now not by chains but by understanding. Months passed after the council's ruling. Life on Outpost Delta 9 slowly returned to normal, though nothing truly felt the same again. The air seemed lighter, the workers friendlier, and the laughter louder in the mess hall. Even the children smiled when they saw Lariah walk by, no longer hiding behind their parents' legs. She had changed the place in ways no one could deny. The woman who once stood in chains now stood tall, repairing solar towers, training new technicians and teaching the young ones how to read alien symbols. Her calm voice echoed through the station halls every morning, guiding others with patience and quiet strength. Evan often watched her from the workshop doorway. He never said much about it, but every time he saw her helping someone or smiling shyly at a joke, something inside him softened. The wound on his side had healed into a thin scar, but the space inside his heart that used to feel empty now felt whole. One evening, as the sun set behind the distant dunes, Lariah approached him holding a small data pad. "Evan," she said softly. A message came. From the city market. He looked up, surprised. "The same place I found you?" She nodded. "They ask for help. Raiders took people again. Humans and aliens both." Evan's expression hardened. He stood and grabbed his jacket. "Then we're going back." The journey to Crithor City was long. The air smelled of heat and dust, the streets buzzing with life. The same market stretched before them, crowded, loud, and cruelly familiar. For a moment, Lariah froze, staring at the auction square where she had once stood in chains. The ghosts of that night flickered in her mind. Laughter, mockery, fear. Evan placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. She shook her head. "No, I must. I will not let others suffer what I did." They pushed through the crowd until they reached the center. The same auctioneer was there, fatter and louder, shouting bids. A frightened alien child stood beside him, trembling. Evan stepped forward. "Stop this," he shouted. The auctioneer blinked. "Human? You again? Didn't learn your lesson last time?" Lariah walked up beside Evan, her presence making the crowd fall silent. Her silver eyes burned like stars. "He learned," she said coldly. "Now it's your turn." The auctioneer laughed nervously. "Who do you think you are to—" Before he could finish, one of the guards whispered, "That's the Lakar widow, the one the council spared." Murmurs spread quickly. Fear rippled through the market. Lariah's reputation had reached even these dusty corners. She climbed onto the platform, her voice rising over the noise. "No one owns another life," she declared. "Not human. Not alien. Not anyone." The crowd quieted. Even the wind seemed to stop. Evan tossed a data chip onto the auction table. "That's enough to buy every slave here. Consider the market closed." The auctioneer stared at the chip, then at the two of them. He opened his mouth to protest, but the sight of the colony security ships landing nearby silenced him. Lariah had contacted them earlier, and now they surrounded the area. One by one, the cages opened. The captives stepped out. Humans, reptilians, insectoids, all blinking at the sunlight like it was their first day alive. Lariah knelt beside the smallest, a trembling child with gray skin and wide eyes. "You are free now," she whispered, brushing dirt from the child's cheek. "No one will hurt you again." The child looked up, whispering something in her own language, a word that meant mother. Lariah's eyes filled with tears. Hours later, when the freed people were taken to safety, Lariah and Evan stood on the edge of the market. The place looked emptier now, its cruelty stripped bare. Evan smiled faintly. "You changed everything, you know." She shook her head. "No, we did. You gave me a chance, I only passed it forward." He chuckled. "Guess we're even then." Lariah turned to him, her expression gentle. "Evan Cross," she said softly. "The day you came to this market, you thought you bought meat." He laughed quietly. "Yeah, I remember." Her voice warmed. "But you bought something else instead. You bought my life back. And maybe my soul." He looked at her with a soft smile. "I didn't buy it, Lariah. I just reminded you it was still yours." As they walked away from the old market, the suns began to rise again. The golden light stretched across the city, touching the same street where they had met months ago. Lariah stopped for a moment and looked up at the sky. "Back then," she whispered, "I thought my world had ended. Now I think it was only beginning." Evan nodded. Funny how the universe works. Sometimes the thing you save ends up saving you. They stood together in silence as the wind carried the smell of spices and metal across the morning air. Around them, life continued. Different species buying, selling, laughing. But something fundamental had shifted. The market was no longer just a place of chains and cruelty. It had become the birthplace of something new, of unity, forgiveness, and the strange, stubborn light humans always carried into the darkest corners of the stars. End message. Humanity is not about being perfect. It's about choosing compassion when the universe expects cruelty. One small act of kindness can change not just a life, but a world.